author of Sustainable Urban Planning, a Systemic Approach. Dr. Sen has over 20 years of experience in the field of urban planning and has worked on several projects. He's a visiting faculty member. As a visiting faculty member, he has conducted research on topics related to urban sustainability, housing, urban governance, and Indian knowledge systems. Sen has received several awards, including Distinguished Speakers Award from Stanford University, the prestigious G.S. Sanyal Best Faculty Excellence Award from the US IIT Alumni Foundation. So we are jumping from one to the other, so that's part of that whole scope and scale of integral yoga that we are exploring here. Moderating the session, we have two people. We have basically Tuan Van Meegen in conversation with Dr. Joy Sen. Tuan worked for many years on the construction of Matri Mandir. He co-founded and managed several township infrastructure services and was a founding member of the Auroville Renewable Energy Group and was in senior management position in the global renewable energy sector. He had co-founded Auroville Consulting and contributes to Auroville's infrastructure planning and development with a focus on energy. Anandi will somehow hold the baton between the two of them. So she is originally from Spain. She came to Auroville in 1989, has been involved in areas of construction of Matri Mandir and was part of the Office of Planning and Development. And for the last 17 years, she has dedicated her services to managing Portus Distribution Center that provides Aurovillians with their basic needs. So over to the three of you. Thank you.
Good morning to all of you, and thank you for staying with us for this last session of the morning. It's about a topic which is a very critical and very important topic in the world today, and in India in particular. And we have two highly specialized people who are going to enlighten us about this topic. First, I would like to invite Dr. Sen to give us an outline of what is sustainable urban development, why the importance of this planning, urban sustainable planning, and what will be the main parameters for it. Later on, we will move towards the Auroville Master Plan and its relation.
Yeah, thank you, Anandi. Thank you, Twine. And it's a session before lunch, so it's highly unsustainable. Yeah. Yes. The Annamaya Kosha is just fighting with the Pranamaya Kosha. Yeah. And there is no Manamaya Kosha, because the mind is with fear that we'll lose the lunch. Yeah. So given that setup, this was a book which I started penning more than a decade back, and then the Energy Research Institute, which is TERI, which is quite well known because of its association with Pachauri, Dr. Pachauri, and US Vice President Al Gore, who got the Nobel Prize and also did the beautiful movie, The Inconvenient Truth. I think many of you have seen that movie. People laughed at him about 3 decades back. But today, I think Al Gore is not laughing, but he's saying, just look at my movie, which I made more than 35 years back. Look at the forest fires. You look at the floods. You look at the imbalances in climate, in ecosystem. In one word, you look at the imbalance between the demand cycles and the supply cycles, whether it's economic, whether it's ecological, or whether it's cultural. Everywhere there seems to be a big question. We are almost coming to the edge of another crisis, which is even more graver than the Second World War, because actually in this war, we are fighting within ourselves and what we want to be and what we are doing. But I didn't have all this in my mind when I wrote this book. So I kept it very simple. So I like to give 2 examples which will clear up the whole thing, hopefully, is that sustainability at its lowest level is, it's very simple. It's about the production, which is economics. It's about the space, which is geography. And it's about the people, which is demography. So the initial sustainability is that some people get into some space and they look for some food and some food for thought, and the city and the region starts growing. Once that's guaranteed, human beings evolve to the next level, which is the food for thought, good culture and things like that. But here comes a bifurcation, Many civilization has taken the wrong route. So instead of the parity of civilization, it moves towards power. And that leads to something which in planning we called primacy of development. Like a city becomes too big, and it becomes too big and even bigger and bigger and bigger, and it starts losing its carrying capacity. That could happen even to a region or even a country. So though we are looking for parity, finally the growth stops at power and disparity. So there something goes unsustainable. It happened with many civilizations over time, over history. Lewis Mumford, I was discussing that with Twain, the cities in history, he has looked at that. I'm sure many of you have seen that book, Cities in History by Lewis Mumford. He has talked about this at large. It was a textbook when I was doing my planning in the US. So he says it's an inflection point. Either you go this way or you go up. Most of the civilization go down. It was even with Greece. In the previous session, Uday was talking about Heraclitus. Even Heraclitus went wrong and he could not sustain Greece. And Sri Aurobindo writes that in the last para on Heraclitus, where the Greek philosophers are reaching the summits of culture, but they don't find a process which Plato had, and that was the big fight between Plato and Aristotle. If you look at the famous picture by Raphael, the Renaissance picture, the School of Athens, Aristotle is saying you have to be grounded, you have to be pragmatic, you need the production. Pranamaya kosha and Annamaya kosha are the two most important things. And you have to look at production, you have to look at institutions, you have to look at material growth, you have to look at material prosperity. And you'll see Plato is just putting the other hand up. You must have seen that picture. It's a very famous picture in Renaissance, drawn by Raphael. It's called the School of Athens. That's a disparity and that's a parity. Aristotle does not listen to his guru, Plato, and somebody listens to Aristotle. That is Alexander. So Alexander takes Greece on the brink of disaster. Because Greece is no more Greece. It becomes an invasion agency in the world, and it starts marching towards India. So I'm not getting into that. So what happens? You don't reach the highest level. So if I go, this is something which I call the 7 Ps in my book. Very simple. They're very simple. So it's produce P1, its population P2, and its place, which is P3. That takes us to power and primacy, which is P4 and P5. But it should be going to P6, which is parity. And that's very rare. It only happens if the civilization is backed up by strong philosophies just not in books, but as a way of life, which has to be breathed in, lived in, and every move you make. It's a very famous song. Every step you take, I'm watching you. Yeah. So that's Police and many other. Yeah. So it's very true. So it's not a philosophy which is there in the books. As Gandhi said, you be the change that you like to see outside. You be the change. So it's just not the question of talking about a cosmic being, and it was there in the preceding session, but it's also in the process of cosmic becoming. So you become that being, that's the whole process of gnosis. This is the Gnostic foundation of yoga. So that takes us to the 7th P, which is there in the book. That's the whole book. In fact, the whole book expands on that. That's a 7th P, which is purity. Purity in what I say and what I do, the match point. Purity in what is there in the book and what I build on the ground. purity in the connections between the institutions of power and the institutions of thought changes. So when we start reaching that, that's sustainability. That's sustainability. So from Aurobindo's, Sri Aurobindo's hierarchy of minds, somebody took it up in the West. His name is Abraham Maslow. And there's a book on that by Joseph Rente, which is Sri Aurobindo and Abraham Maslow. And there is another book by Joseph Rente, which is Sri Aurobindo and Ken Wilber. Yeah, so I think these books are very important. So it changed, revolutionized the Bay Area, started the American Institute of Studies, the Integral Institute of Studies, and finally the Esalen at Big Sur in California. That's why we have Maslow. So Maslow is like an extended Aurobindo in the West. Ken Wilber is like an extended Aurobindo in the West. And Sri Aurobindo is an extension of the ancient sages of India. So you have the whole connection. You have the whole connection. So there's nothing like ancient and modern. You sustain the basic truths of civilization. I'll come to Auroville probably in the second question if there is time. So Auroville becomes an expression of this parity. It becomes a living demonstration of a right carrying capacity of a township, not less than 50,000, not more than 50,000. It's a wonderful number where the mind is without fear, in the words of Tagore, and where the head is held high, and where everybody in the heaven of freedom can think and exchange things with others. So you build that township, of which Auroville is a living foundation, so that you have another Auroville in Japan, you have another Auroville in Australia, and you have another Auroville, say, in the US, which Paulo Soleri started doing in Arco Santi. So this is my whole book, and of course, this is about 15 years back. So I'm learning more. I'm still a student of sustainability. So if I'm writing this book, again, after hearing to the session before me, where the speakers were talking, I think I'll even add those to my book, maybe one line here and there. So the journey of sustainability is not a goal, it's a process which continuously goes on. So I'll leave it here. And if there is a point to expand, I'll move on. Yeah.
Thank you, Dr. Sen. We can see you are a philosopher, apart of being a planner and architect. I would like to invite Tuan to develop more on this sustainability impact on Auroville and on the master plan of Auroville.
Yeah, before I do that, you refer to Louis Mumford. And in fact, Sri Aurobindo makes a very similar comment when he talks about the Roman Empire, where he says that these cities which the Roman Empire built were very great in organization and administration, but he says the individual dwindles and is overpowered and overshadowed, and eventually by the smallness and feebleness of the individual, the huge organism inevitably and slowly loses even its great conservative vitality and dies of an increasing stagnation. So that can happen when the cities collapse under their own weight. Now, coming to the subject of sustainability and Auroville, I want to tell you a small anecdote first. So for a couple of years, I was in the renewable energy sector. And then very often you are invited to workshops as a so-called expert. And ironically, most of those workshops will be held in 5-star hotels with the curtains closed, artificial lighting on, air conditioning at 18 degrees centigrade. Totally unsustainable. But what was very interesting is that the expression on the faces of many of the audience was the following. The expression was, I do hope that the experts sitting there on the stage have solutions for all our problems such that we can continue to do whatever we are doing today. Right? So for them, sustainability was about sustaining their present life. In one of those workshops in Chennai, somebody got up with a question and said, do you have 2 low-hanging fruits which we can immediately implement? I said, yes, I have even 3, but I will start with 2. So I got up from the stage like this and I went to the window and removed the curtains on both sides. So now we have daylight. All right, we have daylight. So the lights could be switched off. And then I asked the managers of the hotel, can you please increase the thermostat from 18 degrees to about 24, 25? And he did, and everybody was still very comfortable. So 2 low-hanging fruits were done on the spot. Now coming to sustainability in the context of Auroville. In a way, sustaining is the opposite of transforming, right? People want to sustain. And Auroville is meant to be a laboratory where we transform. So in a way, there is a contradiction, but it is not. Because what you have to sustain in Auroville is indeed an environment, a physical envelope of the city, an economy, food growing, agriculture, etc. But you don't want to sustain the life as it is known today. So Auroville is about creating an environment which is making sure that there is a continuous process of transformation and change, and not to sustain life as it is. So in a way, it sounds as a contradiction, but it is not. Now, where are we today with sustainability in Auroville in a very practical sense? If you build the township of Auroville exactly as per this master plan, the question that sometimes people ask, is this master plan still valid today? Some people even say that in the 1960s, there was no concern about the environment, and therefore this master plan does not take care of it. The contrary is true. If you literally implement this master plan square meter by square meter, it will result in a totally sustainable township. Let me just give you 2 examples of water and energy. Water, the total amount of water that falls on Auroville every year in form of rainwater is sufficient for a population of 50,000, more than that. The problem, of course, is that this water falls in a very short period during the monsoon, so you have to store the water. And our own water experts in Auroville have come to the conclusion that the old approach of directing the water to a watershed and then percolating it doesn't make much sense anymore, because you keep on percolating while thousands of bore wells around are pumping it out. So you have to go back to the ponds, lakes, and surface harvesting. That is the water part. The energy part, if you take roughly 40% of the roofs of Auroville, I'm talking about a completed city, and put solar panels on them, you take care of all the energy requirements of that township. You have to, of course, add to it storage. Energy storage is the main issue. It's the same with water, by the way. Water falls in a very short time. You have to store it for the year, and energy is only available, solar energy, during certain hours. So mobility experts who have come to Auroville have told us that the combination of the inner ring, the crown, the outer ring, and the connecting radials is an ideal model to make a very flexible and incrementally improving mobility system. And I could go on and on other parts of that township. The mother already, when Roger Anger, the architect, pointed out to the mother, I think it was in '66, in a letter, that mother, in all the cities in the world, we find that cars are spoiling the cities in a very big way. She wrote in her own handwriting in the margin, at that time, Elon Musk was not even conceived, forget about born. She wrote in the margin, yes, electric mobility, 15 kilometers an hour, payload 200 kg. She was already thinking of electric mobility at that time. So I would say, and I would request your comments on this also, that this plan was actually ahead of its time. It is not outdated, it was predated, you can say. It was too early. And another point which we should remember is that when a township like Auroville is vision-driven, a vision is timeless. You never hear people say, vision accomplished. You hear people say, mission accomplished. But a vision is eternal, it's timeless, and you keep on working towards it. So I would say a vision-driven township like Auroville will never be outdated. And this master plan, as it is laying here in front of us, if it is implemented even literally, will definitely result in a sustainable laboratory of evolution. That is my take on it.
I would like to invite Dr. Sen to comment on the master plan of Auroville, because we are aware you know about it, and something that Tuan opened the door to, being a laboratory, being a model for India and for the world, how important that is.
As you said, I'll again become philosophical a bit. Yeah. We call it a master plan of Auroville, but it's actually a vision, which Twain just said. And Mother saw this vision in the depths of a meditation, yoga. And the Auroville, at the crux, at the nave, at the hub of the will, it's a galactic plan. It's a whole galaxy.
Experiment these things, but not in those old cities and all. So what's your take on this?
Yeah, I mean, we need a whole class for this with a blackboard and a chalk, but it's not here. If you take the case of Varanasi, it already has a vision, which is the Ardha Chandra, and the Ganga is Uttar Bahini there. So wherever that river is Uttar Bahini, it's a Kashi. So Kashi is just not the name of a city. It's a place where the river, while it's going from the origin to the destination, upturns and gets a chance to look back at its origin. So you have a Kashi in Tibet, you have a Uttar Kashi, you have a Kashi, and then you have a Dakshin Kashi, which is Kanchi. So these are models which are so important to understand. So we don't have to redesign Varanasi. Varanasi already has a vision. So Auroville has a vision. So you have a similar thing. So we should not start seeing a problem to begin with. The solution is already there. All we need to do is understand history and look at cities in history. That's Lewis Mumford. He's brilliant, He's looking with so much of patience and parity, And he's like a master planner. And he's looking at time, series of time. He's looking at the dynamics of human civilization. And he's giving emphasis to the dynamics rather than settlements itself, the change which is constantly happening. Yeah. Thank you.
Sudeep, please come forward.
I have to say brilliant again. Can you hear me? Yeah. Brilliant again. All the 3 sessions were incredibly enriching. So it's been really worth listening to all of you. Couple of things. You've touched upon the circularity of the plan, the spiraling and so on. It's not quite a circle. In fact, it's finite at one level and infinite at the other level.
Right.
But cities also are vertical in modern cities are vertical. Ancient cities are linear but bent. It can, like Kashi, following the river, or Silk Route, they'll follow a certain kind of transactional thing. What you haven't touched upon, and I'm interested since you both are experts, is the porosity of a city. Mm-hmm. By which I mean not just access. Auroville is gated. It's inaccessible. It's theoretically accessible through the mind and through the heart if you come through certain channels. Whereas other cities which grow are porous and democratic in a way. So there's, of course, a beautiful architectural design going on here, the circularity this way, and then I just want to hear the design part of it.
Give that to Twain.
Yeah. Are you speaking also of the physical porosity or the social porosity, or?
I'm talking about both physical and social. Social more, actually.
Yeah, exactly.
Social more, much more.
Yeah,
because, why shouldn't it be 50,000? And why should there be an admission card and all that sort of thing? I can understand. Then call it not a city, call it a club.
Exactly. Yeah. So that is so let me then talk about the physical porosity only in 1 minute and about the social porosity in 2 minutes. The physical porosity is very much there, because even those so-called line of force, which are here in the plan, are actually not monolithic concrete structures, as some people sometimes say. They are actually modules which can be connected in any manner you want. And your brief remark about cities becoming more vertical is also interesting, because my understanding of the recent insights is that verticality is also a solution because you require less land, right? So in this plan, there is some part of the city is vertical and some part is more horizontal. In fact, the residential zone itself has got 5 sectors which goes from very low density to high density. Now coming to the social porosity, where you say that Auroville appears to be inaccessible, not appears to be, is inaccessible. This is an issue that Auroville today is dealing with very strongly. It has indeed, there are a number of people who are well-wishers of Auroville, who have good feelings for Auroville, who say you have become a sort of a club. In fact, you use that word club also. And that has something to do maybe with the fact that the project has been going on for so long that people have gotten attached to Auroville as a project site or a construction site rather than accelerating the construction. You can probably spend a whole afternoon analyzing the reasons for it, but that it is there is very much a fact. And only when we start seriously building the city and attracting a lot of young people have to come, then you will see that this porosity that you're speaking about and social interaction at all levels will take place. So your perception is very correct, and I think something is being done about it.
If I may butt in. The city plan went through 4 variations until it became porous. We'll talk about it later. But porosity is inbuilt together with the mobility. Sorry for butting in.
Yeah, of course, our moderator is telling me that I should add to the fact that, of course, the township is open, but at the same time, it is expected to attract people who are dedicated to the vision of Auroville, obviously. It is an intentional community with a vision. So, of course, you would like people to come here who are subscribing to that vision, but you can only discover the vision if you can come here. So it's a bit of a chicken and the egg. So I think that point is very well taken.
We have one more question.
I think in this Auroville Literature Festival document, if you see, there's a document towards the end, which has been actually written by the mother called the Auroville Charter. So Sudeep's point, the first is that Auroville belongs to nobody in particular. Auroville belongs to humanity as a whole. But to live in Auroville, one must be a willing servitor of divine consciousness. I think that is the whole. So it's a vision-driven city. This was not the vision to make it a gated community for a few people. And that's what we are now sincerely striving towards.
I think we have
to stop now. Yeah. The last one. Okay, that's the last question.
Hi, is that on?
Yeah.
I enjoyed what you said about sustainability, that actually it's to be sincere, like Mother would say in Auroville, you don't lie. And to be sincere and just to be an honest person is actually being sustainable, because you have to deal with the reality. People can shout at me what is good or not good or sustainable or organic or not. But as a person, I would have to deal with my reality and try to be honest. And I think that is sustainability, just to see where we are, what we can do now. Because to paste a perfectly organic and materially sustainable system is not our... Would you...
Yeah, I think that's what we try to address in the beginning of the conversation, is that in a way sustain and transforming are two opposites, right? So the sustainability in the context of Auroville simply means that you sustain the physical envelope and the social envelope so that transformation can take place. Whereas elsewhere, sustainability is understood as sustaining life as it is. Whereas here, it's just the opposite. You want to transform life as it is. That's the whole vision of Auroville. So thank you for that clarification. And by the way, sustainability in the most spiritual sense, I may like to add, is when the psyche comes to the front. Because when the psychic being is coming to the front and leads life, that is really sustainable at the spiritual level.
spiritual sustainability.
Spiritual sustainability.
Okay. I think it's time for us to close this session. Thank you very much to our distinguished speakers.